So today I'm going to be doing my May wrap up. I got through a total of 6 books this month. I'm really happy about that. And they were all really good reads, so that's also really great. So let's just jump into the books because I know this is going to be a long one. So the first book that I read this month was Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kurajaswal. And I talked about this book a little bit in my TBR challenge because I bought it when I wasn't really supposed to, but I was really glad that I did buy it. I really enjoyed it. Basically, this book follows a young Indian girl that lives in the UK, and she decides to start teaching a writing class for the older women in her community. When she goes to this class, it turns out that it's not really a creative writing class, but more of teaching. But then the class kind of evolves into them wanting to tell these erotic stories. It's about how these widows are experimenting with their sexuality through these stories and becoming more comfortable with themselves, and I really enjoyed it. There's also like a secondary plot to this novel that's kind of got more of a murder mystery to it, which I was not expecting, but I really enjoyed. I think that there's a lot at stake for these women in this book. I think it's just a really awesome read. I don't think in terms of the writing it's the best writing I've read, but the story overall was really interesting. It kept me hooked onto the story, and I loved the little bit of romance that you get. You actually get to read some of the erotic stories that the widows tell, so that was really an interesting part to the story too, because it's kind of, it takes a different tone when you're reading the erotic stories and then when you're reading the rest of the story. But I really enjoyed it, and I think that if you're into this kind of stuff, this might be a good book to read first. It does kind of mesh fiction and erotica together in this story, so I really recommend it. It's an awesome read. It's hilarious. It's intense at times, and I absolutely loved it. So the next book I read, I don't have a copy of because I had to give it back to work, but it was for, I'm starting to do more of, taking on more of the hiring responsibilities at my job. So one of my bosses wanted me to read this book called To the A Method for Hiring by Geoff Smart. And I really enjoyed this book. I mean, it's probably not something any of you would be interested in reading unless you're also hiring people at your job or anything like that. But it's just a different look at how you hire people and how you go about the hiring process, what type of questions you should ask, and how you get deeper into a person's character, personality, and their job skills without asking the very generic questions that typically a hiring person usually asks. So it was really helpful. It also talks about the type of goals, like you have to kind of know who you want for the role before you go out and hire, because it helps you to figure out whether or not these people that you're looking at would be a good fit for the role. So you have to figure out the responsibilities of the role, the type of people that would be successful in the role, and then how that translates into an actual candidate. So it's a really interesting book. If you're hiring people or interested in learning what people that are hiring are looking for, I think this is a great book to check out, but I won't talk about it too much just because I know it's probably not something most of my audience is interested in reading. So I was really impressed with the amount of things that I learned in the book. Going through the book, I thought I was pretty confident in my hiring ability, but this book just kind of broadened my understanding of what it is to look for a good candidate and how you should do that. So I definitely recommend it if you are looking to hire somebody or just want to know more about good hiring practices. And the next book that I finished was Hot Milk by Deborah Levy. If you watch my May TBR challenge picks, this was one of the books on the list, so I was able to read at least one of the books on my TBR picks, and unfortunately I don't really think I enjoyed this book that much. I think I'm gonna end up unhauling it actually. I liked it more towards the end of the book rather than the beginning. So let me tell you a little bit more about this book. It basically follows a woman who's going through, she's an anthropologist who is getting her doctorate degree, but she had to put that on hold because her mother has been going through these weird different symptoms and ailments. So they travel to Spain to work with the doctor that they hope can help figure out what is wrong with her mother. She's having difficulty walking, she can't drink water. She has a lot of different random symptoms that don't really add up to one certain illness or disease. So they go to this doctor in hopes that he can diagnose her. And it basically follows the main character, I believe her name was Sophia, as she's kind of living in Spain, dealing with all of these issues with her mother, and she's starting to think that maybe the issues that her mother is having is not real. It's kind of all in her head. She's just doing it to get attention, and then the book kind of progresses from there. I think the beginning of this book is a little strange, and I like strange, but I think it was a little too I didn't really connect with any of the characters, and I think the strangeness really made it difficult for me to connect with Sophia. And she is also kind of struggling with her sexuality in the story too. She starts to become attracted to a female that is also like visiting Spain at the time, and they kind of develop this relationship. But I don't want to delve too much into it because I don't want to spoil the story. But I think the first half of this book kind of falls short. I don't think you really get to connect with many of the characters. But then towards the second half of the book, you start to begin to realize that maybe all of this isn't as it seems, and you're really starting to question what is reality and what is going in the minds of these characters. And I think that part, the second half of the book, was done a lot better, but it's still, I feel like at the end of this book, you're still left with a lot of unanswered questions, and it just didn't really satisfy what I was expecting or wanting from the book. So I don't know. I'm thinking about keeping it to reread it, because I think giving it a second read after knowing the basic plot of the book maybe will reveal some more hidden things that I didn't really get on my first read of this book. So I'm still kind of debating whether or not I want to give it a second chance or just unhaul it, because I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to. So the next book I actually listened to on Audible, but because I loved it so much I ended up buying a physical copy of it, and that is The Rise and Fall of Dinosaurs, A New History of a Lost World by Steve Buscemi. And I really enjoyed this book. It was so amazing. As you probably know, I love dinosaurs and I love learning new information about it. And this book just came out in April, so it's pretty up to date on what paleontologists know about dinosaurs. And it was just fascinating to get another glimpse at what they know about what dinosaurs were with feathers, and how dinosaurs evolved, and how they became like the leaders of the world during the Jurassic period. So I really enjoyed this book. I want to read this over just because the physical copy has pictures in it that I didn't really get to enjoy because I was listening to it on Audible. So I want to reread it to kind of get a better feel, see if the pictures add to the story. And I also think if you're interested in paleontology and how paleontologists discover new dinosaurs and classify them, and I think this is a great glimpse into the life of a paleontologist. He goes into a lot of detail about the different dinosaur bones that he himself discovered, and also the dinosaurs that his friends have discovered and projects that he's taken part in. He does a lot of work with discovering the family trees of dinosaurs, so he kind of figures out how dinosaurs evolved, and I think that was really interesting and a different take on the different connections that dinosaurs have, which I really enjoyed. So overall, just a fantastic book. If you're interested in dinosaurs, I would highly recommend this. You need this in your collection for sure. The information is so detailed and presented in a way that's easy for basically anyone to understand. So I highly recommend this book. If you're just kind of interested in learning about dinosaurs, again, definitely worth picking up. And the next two books are comics that I read, the first volumes of a couple series that I wanted to check out. And the first one that I read was Rat Queens. Now, this comic, I am just so upset that I did not pick it up sooner, because it's really good and really just, I love the story. So basically you follow a group of 4 girls who are mercenaries in this fictional world, and it just goes through the different hijinks and different shenanigans that they get into. It's a hilarious book. It's a little bit vulgar as well, so if you're not into like vulgar humor, this might not be a book for you, but I really enjoyed it. Each of the characters play on the very stereotypical tropes in like fantasy hijink stories. So we have an elf, a female dwarf, and I think a mage who is an atheist. So it's just a very eclectic group of characters, and I really fell in love with all 4 of the women in this book, and they're just strong females, and I cannot wait to pick up volume 2. This one ends on a pretty interesting cliffhanger, and I really want to check out what happens in the next volume. And the next comic that I read was Monstrous, and this was amazing. Like, I absolutely love, not only do I love like the artwork, it's really pretty. It has these very like muted greens and blue tones in it, but the story was so interesting. Granted, it does take a little while to get into. You're kind of jumped directly into the story and into the world, and you have to kind of learn what's going on, a little bit of the background and history of the world as you progress through the story. But I think it's definitely worth getting through those first couple of like scenes to really get a grasp and understand what's going on. But this is a really, really dark book too, which I enjoyed, and I appreciated how dark it got. I really like it. It kind of gives me vibes of Princess Mononoke in a way, because there are these spirit animals that kind of roam after they die. They like roam the earth, but they can't see humans or anything, and they're just like these giant creatures, and that kind of just reminded me of Princess Mononoke a little bit. But I think it's definitely its own unique story. I really, really enjoyed this one, and I know the second volume is out, and I cannot wait to pick it up. I am just so hooked on this story, and I absolutely love it. And the last book that I read in the month of May was actually a reread. I read Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, and I wanted to reread this book in May because it is my birthday month, and this is one of my favorite classics of all time. I want to create like an annual time where I reread this book, and I decided to pick May to reread it. So basically this book follows Janie and as she grows up and comes to terms with her womanhood, who she is, and how she wants to be portrayed. So the book starts off with her getting married to an older man that owns a farm. She ends up leaving him, and then it kind of progresses into the other marriages throughout her life, and how the people that are in her life kind of view the different things that she has done and the different choices that she has made. So overall, this book, I love it. I think it's beautifully written in the way that Zora Neale Hurston is able to kind of transition between the dialect of the characters and then her own voice as the narrator of the story is just beautiful. I really love the storyline. There are just so many lines in this book that really grab me, and there is one that I do want to talk about. And it's after one of her husbands hit her for the first time, and this is what happens afterwards. Janie stood where he left her for unmeasured time and thought. She stood there until something fell off the shelf inside her. Then she went inside there to see what it was. It was her image of Jody, tumbled down and shattered. And I really like that line. It stuck with me the first time that I read it in high school, and it still sticks with me today. I don't know why, but I love this book, and I love the different themes that go into it. It talks a lot about race, but it's also about class and how Black people are viewed in their own community, which I think is something that it's rarely talked about in such a really successful way. And I think this is just a really fabulous book because it really does address those issues about how Black women were viewed in their own communities. I just think everyone should read and pick up. It's such a great story. It does take a little bit of getting used to the writing style because the characters do talk in their own dialect and vernacular. It took me a little while to get into it because I did have to like remember, okay, yeah, they're talking a little bit differently, but once you get past that, I think this book is definitely worth the read. So yeah, those are all of the books that I got through in the month of May. I really enjoyed all of them, honestly. Probably my least favorite book this month was Hot Milk, but I think I just was probably not the intended audience for that book, or I just need to give it another reread. We'll see. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want. So let me know if you've read any of these books and want to talk more about them, or what books you read in the month of May. You can leave that all down in the comments below, and I will see you guys very soon with another video. I'll be posting my TBR challenge update and picks for June probably later this week. So see you then.